DreAllDay.com.
Tuned in to the show where you learn the discipline to show up day after day to do the work, the confidence to put yourself out there boldly and authentically, and the mental toughness to continue showing up, doing the work, putting yourself out there, even when the success you've expected to achieve is yet to be achieved. And on top of all this, I'm gonna give you some more. You're gonna get the personal initiative. This is the go-getter energy that puts all of this stuff in motion. This is the go-getter energy that moves you and everyone else out there, anyone, to go and make things happen instead of waiting for things to happen. And we put all of this together into one package, one mindset, one method, one philosophy. There's a book, there is a master class, this audio experience you're listening to right now that is called Work on Your Game. My name is Dre Baldwin, also known as Dre All Day, and welcome to the show. Today's topic is let's make sure we draw a clear line of delineation between the late bloomers and the slow learners. Now, the reason why I'm even talking about this topic is because I've received, actually just this morning when I'm recording this, not the date that you're listening to it, but I received a direct message on Instagram that sparked this idea. I had written something or posted something in my Instagram story about how slow learners get left behind in life. I've talked about this in an earlier masterclass. I'll refer you to that one in a moment. But this person who obviously saw it, they had a response, and they were saying to me, well, they were trying to say that they didn't necessarily agree with what I was saying, and then they try to draw a parallel to people who are late bloomers in life, which doesn't make any sense, the parallel that they were trying to draw. But instead of me explaining to this one individual, which had been a waste of my time and energy to explain to them for understanding, I said, I'm just going to make a whole masterclass on this topic so that everyone can understand, even though you may not have even had the question or the idea or the comment. I'm putting this out there, so just in case anyone ever has this question, idea, or comment similar to this individual who didn't quite understand what he was trying to say to me, I have it here laid out. So you see how I can take that situation that could have just been, again, I could have just utilized my resource, time, my most valuable resource, and gotten into a conversation with this one individual on a subject that they obviously didn't understand what I was saying. But instead, I'm going to utilize that to give all of you value through this masterclass episode right here. So in masterclass number 601, that's where the topic was, be a quick study because slow learners get left for dead. In that masterclass, I explained how every one of us needs to pick up on new concepts and ideas quickly, or we'll get left behind, because the people who are learning faster than us, they're just going to keep going. Unlike in school, where everything slows down for someone who doesn't quite understand something in life, quote unquote, real life, people don't do that. In real life, they just keep going. They just leave you there. And I did a live stream on Instagram, actually, not too long ago in early April 2020. I did a live stream on this exact topic, and someone had said to me, this is the person who had actually sent me a DM, they said something along the lines of, well, if somebody's playing basketball, they could be a late bloomer and they could end up being good. And which really makes no sense. If this person, and they responded to my Instagram story and they're watching my stream, so they obviously know who I am. And I'm like, mofo, do you understand who you're talking to? Like, I was a late bloomer in basketball. Like when I tell my story, I always explain that part, how I started in basketball, didn't have much skill or didn't show much talent from the beginning, eventually started to show some skill later on, or at least later relative to when someone who's going to become a college, let alone a pro athlete, has shown some promise. I showed my promise a lot later, but then I was able to make a 9-year professional career out of it. So how are you going to preach to me about what a late bloomer looks like when, which again, made no sense. But again, that's why I didn't waste my energy or my time talking to this one individual, because what would I have benefited from it? And they probably wouldn't have even understood what I was saying had I explained it back to them. But I'm going to get a whole master class out of this. So while the person who messaged me was talking about what other people do, I'm telling you about what I did and what I know what I'm talking about. But it's all good. No problem. I can thank that person. I don't even know who they were, but I will send them a thank you if they happen to be listening to this right now for supplying me with the seed of an idea. And what I'm going to do is take it from a hot line and make it into a hot song. And let's address the difference between a late bloomer and a slow learner here in today's class. Point number one, today's topic, once again, is late bloomers versus slow learners. You need to understand the difference. Point number one, what is a late bloomer? I'm going to give you the definition that's a pretty good one that I got from Wikipedia. Quote, a person whose talents or capabilities are not visible to others until later than usual. The term is used metaphorically to describe a child or adolescent who develops slower than others in their age group, but eventually catches up and in some cases overtakes their peers, or an adult whose talent or genius in a particular field only appears later in life than is normal, in some cases only in old age. Now I want you to notice, and that's close quote, notice from that description, straight out of Wikipedia, which is pretty well said, notice that there's nothing in this description that says anything about learning. Okay? So being a late bloomer has nothing to do with your capacity to learn. Being a late bloomer is about when your skills and talents begin to show relative to when your peers' skills and talents begin to show. And peers could be age group, it could be ethnicity, it could be some other kind of psychographic or demographic, it could be the field that you're in, it could be people at school, it could be the industry that you have immersed yourself in, whatever it is. But when it says late is relative to what is normally, quote unquote, normally expected. What is normal? Well, I guess normal is the baseline of what usually happens in a particular area. And normal is also another relative term. So all of these are relative to what else is going on or what is expected of you in the field that you happen to be in, as is the word slow. So slow or late, those are both relative to, again, whatever you happen to be involved in. And as I said, I was in this group. I was a late bloomer when it came to playing basketball. Being a late bloomer as an athlete did not mean that I was a slow learner. I was not really that slow of a learner when it came to basketball. The fact is I just didn't have the skills to do anything. So whether I could learn or not didn't even matter because there was nobody teaching me because I hadn't shown any promise because I bloomed late. You understand? So it wasn't about my ability to learn things. It's about my ability to actually have some skill to do anything. A late bloomer, actually, let me back up. A late bloomer is not necessarily a slow learner. You could be both, but not necessarily both. A late bloomer is someone who is just not competent as early or as soon as others, or they're not as competent as a quote unquote normal or as quote unquote usual as others are. A late bloomer could actually be a very fast learner. A late bloomer could be someone who learns things really quickly, but understand that there's a huge difference between learning something and actually doing something. You could learn something and understand a concept, but not be able to execute on that concept, even though you understand it completely. I had a good grasp of what I wanted to do on a basketball court, for example. I just couldn't do it. I didn't have the ability to do it because my abilities, my talents, and my skills did not develop until later. So while, yes, you can learn things by doing them, and you could also learn something, or at least believe you've learned it, or think you understand it, even if you never actually have executed it. So again, learning, there are different ways that you could define that word. This could be a huge semantic debate, but I'm trying to keep this as simple as possible. So the first point that I want you to understand is that a late bloomer is a person whose abilities are showing later than others, or at least what is deemed as normal or usual or acceptable or fast enough, or whatever relative term that you want to use. But it doesn't necessarily mean that you learn things slowly. It just means your capacities and your talents, which could be your natural abilities, they're just not showing yet. You can learn a whole lot, or maybe nobody's even trying to teach you anything because you have not shown any promise. You have not shown any potential. You have not shown that you have any raw material to do anything. So why would anybody invest in teaching you anything? So you can't learn slowly because there's nothing to learn. Because nobody's trying to teach you. You understand? Point number 2. Today's topic, once again, is late bloomer versus slow learner, understanding the difference. A slow learner is someone who may have already earned an opportunity, already earned a spot based on the skill that they have demonstrated or their assumed potential or the talent that it looks like they have. Yet, the slow learner is the person who doesn't pick up things and implement as quickly as needed to keep pace with what's going on. That's what a slow learner is. You're just not picking things up. You're not understanding it. You're not applying it. You're not able to implement as quickly as you need to implement. So being a slow learner is not necessarily about your ability to do something or your physical ability. Let's just say from the neck down. Slow learner is really about what's going on from the neck up. All right, the way that you think, the way that you process things. A late bloomer, for the most part, what I'm going to say is about from the neck down, your actual ability to execute and do things. Now, again, as I said, this could be a huge semantics debate as to what exactly late bloomer could be. Somebody could say, well, late bloomer could be the way that you think, and a slow learner could be the way that you do things, but this is my show, so it's going to be the way that I just explained it to you. So a slow learner is someone who may have already earned their spot based on their skill or assumed potential, yet they just don't pick up things or implement as quickly as needed to keep pace with what is happening. So this could be at work, this could be as part of some group, or in a wider competition with your peers that you may or may not even know is going on. So what does, quote, fast enough, close quote, mean? What's fast enough? What's not fast enough? I get people asking me often, well, Dre, is it normal for me to do things like this? Is this the way things are supposed to be? These are all these relative terms and I always return that question with another question. What are you comparing it against? What is the baseline? If you're asking if something is normal, I need a baseline to compare it to. All right, you can't just answer that question without a baseline. Is this fast enough? Well, who are you comparing yourself to know if it's fast enough? If somebody's faster than you, then no, it's not fast enough. If they're slower than you, then yes, it's plenty of fast. So it depends on what the baseline is that you're comparing something to say whether it's normal, usual, fast enough, acceptable. Again, all of these terms that could lead to a lot of semantic back and forth. So it depends on the speed of the environment. To know whether you're moving fast enough, learning fast enough, whether you're picking things up quickly enough, it depends on the speed of the environment in which you are involved, and it depends on the speed of your peers. Because if everyone's going at the same pace as you, then I guess you can't say that anybody's too slow, or the person in charge can say, you know, all of you are too slow. Or they can say, well, this is normal because everybody's doing the same thing. So again, it depends on the way that the angle from which you look at a situation. And if everybody's adapting faster than you, that makes you slow, right? If I'm a trainer at a company and I sit down with the whole team and there's 10 people on the team and I teach you a new concept and I say you need to implement this concept in the next 48 hours and 8 of those 10 people are implementing the concept within the next 48 hours and they're doing it seamlessly and it appears that they pretty much understand exactly what I explained to them, but 2 of the 10 people in the group don't seem to have picked up on it. They are getting to things slower than the other 80% of the group. Now I'm going to look at them and say, okay, you guys are slow learners, at least when it comes to this topic. You may not be a slow learner in all of your life. You may not be a slow learner in anything else that you do. But in this thing right here, right now, today, you are learning too slow. You are moving too slow. You need to pick your pace up or we're going to leave you behind. That's just how it is. Okay, I want everybody to understand this is just how it is in life. And I'm going to get to that in a minute. We're going to talk a little bit more about that exact thing in one moment. A late bloomer, as I said, could be a very fast learner once they have the abilities to implement what they're learning. You see, once I started to show some abilities to do what I wanted to do or what I needed to do on a basketball court to make myself appear competent to the decision makers and the coaches and even the fellow players who I was out there playing with, once I showed that I had the ability to actually do stuff, I started learning really quickly because, all right, I need to learn how to do that. All right, I can start doing it because I had the capabilities now. My talent was starting to show now. I had more confidence now because I was actually showing some skill. I was showing myself that I had skill. I could see that other people were accepting that I had skill. So it made it a whole lot easier for, first of all, to find some things to learn because there were people who were willing to teach me things because I showed that I had some capability. I looked like someone who, if someone invested some time and effort in me, it looked like it would actually pay off. Now, before that, it didn't look like that, so nobody would invest anything in me, so there was nothing for me to learn fast or slow because there was nobody teaching. But as soon as some people saw that I had some capabilities, I started getting more teaching. I started getting more hands-on work from people who knew more than me, and I started picking up things really quickly. So the fact that even though I was a late bloomer, I was not a slow learner. And there are some people who are slow learners, but they're not late bloomers. They bloom actually very early, but they still pick up things really slowly. So they could look like they're way ahead of everybody, but they're actually behind because they're picking up things and understanding and grasping things and implementing them more slowly. But because they're so, again, physically or mechanically or performance-wise ahead of everybody else, it might look like that they're way advanced, but they're actually not. So the people who don't have their capabilities are picking up things quicker. So they're accelerating faster, even though they're behind this person who has shown that they're the early bloomer, I guess is what you would call it, for lack of a better term. Hopefully I didn't confuse you with giving that example there. This would be a good example to use a graph or a chart for, but I'm not too much into those. So a late bloomer, as I said, could be a fast learner once they have the abilities to implement what it is they are learning. Let's move on to point number 3. Today's topic is the late bloomer versus the slow learner. Point number 3, being a late bloomer, as I've said, is about your performance capabilities. Being a slow learner is about your capacity for understanding things. Now, let me ask a couple questions. Does everybody learn the same way? No. Does everyone develop at the same pace? Should every person be uniformly expected to develop and learn in the same way and the same pace as those who have come before them, as the people to the left and to the right of them, as whatever the baseline established has been, as whatever the standard is supposed to be? Should everyone be accepted to adhere to the standard? I mean, no, 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 and no. No to all of those questions. Which is why I've talked about many times the education system in America, it's standardized, right? Everyone goes to the same classes, reads from the same books, has to learn from the same teacher with the same information, and then you got to take the same test, even though every human being is unique. I mean, we all agree that every human being is unique, but then we send people to school and we teach everybody the same things, the same way, from the same person, over and over and over again, year after year after year. That doesn't even make sense. If everybody's unique, why are we giving everyone the exact same experience when we agree that everyone is different? It makes no sense, right? But guess what? Nothing in this masterclass or in anywhere in life did anybody ever guarantee you that things were supposed to be fair. So while I agree that when things are set, when there's some standardized expectation that is just put on everyone just in a blanket way. All right, everyone's supposed to adhere to this expectation and do things this way and learn at this pace. And if you don't show basketball talent by the age of 13, then you just get left behind and nobody's going to pay you any mind and nobody's going to teach you anything. And people will just assume that you're a slow learner or that you're never going to bloom. And if you happen to be a late bloomer, you still may not get your chance because the train has already left the station. Listen, none of these things are fair. All right, the situation or what I had to go through to make it, quote unquote, in basketball because I was a late bloomer was not fair. Things were not set up for me to be successful. There was no one was taking me under their wing and making sure that even though I was a late bloomer, I got into the room that the doors had already been locked. No, I had to figure out a way. And if I didn't have the mental toughness to figure out that way on my own, as many other late bloomers might not have had, then my story wouldn't be my story. Who knows you would even be listening to me talk right now. Nobody told you that this is supposed to be fair. If anybody told you that things are supposed to be fair in whatever it is you're doing right now, I'm assuming that you're in kindergarten or maybe first grade listening to the show. So congratulations on getting in early when it comes to personal development. But if you're older than that, if you're older than 6 years old and you're thinking things are supposed to be fair, I'm going to tell you that somebody gave you some bad information. Or maybe you just misinterpreted what somebody said. You thought they said things are supposed to be fair. This might not have been what they said. Maybe you weren't listening. All right. Maybe you had an AirPod in and you were listening to me when that person was talking. So you thought you heard something that you didn't actually hear. Nothing in this class says that things are supposed to be fair in life. All right. In life, you're going to deal with unfairness a whole lot of times. And in masterclass number 1301, guess what the subject was? Your options when facing unfairness. Masterclass number 955, what to do when things are, guess what, unfair. I talked about the fact that life is never going to be fair many times on this show. I didn't do a whole class of that exact topic, but maybe I will. But I want you all to understand that if you're a late bloomer, the odds will be set against you. That's why they call it a late bloomer. All right, you figured things out, but you figured it out a little bit too late. And late, usually when we say late, that means there's something wrong with being late. You don't want to be late. You want to be early, right? Early or on time. You don't want to be late. Late is to be forgotten, as I talked about in another masterclass here on this show. Let me tell you what number that was. If you didn't listen to that one, you should listen to it. That was number 1412. Early is on time is late, and late is forgotten. And a slow learner, that's kind of like impugning on somebody's intelligence. If you say somebody's a slow learner, some people can take that. Many people would take that as if you're trying to say that they're dumb or they're just not that bright or they just can't pick up on things that other people are picking up on. Again, if you call them a slow learner, that means you're comparing them to what you expect. So they're learning a little bit more slowly than other people. So then I think a lot of people would take that. If you were to tell somebody that they're a slow learner, they would take that as an insult. Well, listen, I didn't tell you that life is supposed to be fair. I didn't tell you that everybody's not equal. All right, we are born equal. We don't remain equal. Very quickly, things start to change based on our environment, based on who we are, based on how quickly we bloom, how quickly we learn things. We do not remain equal for very long. In life, you will go places where the early developers or early adopters or people who are early bloomers, they will get opportunities that everyone else is excluded from simply because they showed promise earlier than other people. There is a book by Malcolm Gladwell. This one was, man, he wrote so many books, but this one was Outliers, where he introduces, or the Gladwell version of the 10,000 hour rule. This is where that 10,000 hour rule actually became popularized and mainstream, was through Malcolm Gladwell's book. But he was not the one who actually, he's not the one who coined that whole concept. That came from a guy named Anders Ericsson. And I talked about that in masterclass number 63, way back in 2016. It's called the 10,000 hour rule and you. Again, that's masterclass number 63. But in that book, Malcolm Gladwell, he did an examination of hockey players in Canada, because Malcolm Gladwell is Canadian. And he talked about how young hockey players who show a lot of promise and a lot of talent at age, I don't remember what number it was, maybe age 9 or 10, they get put into these specialized trainings. They get the best type of facilities to work in. They get all the equipment. They have these best trainers who are teaching them. And therefore, the kids who showed promise early, they get all of this great training. So what happens? Their promise and their talent gets enhanced. So the gap between them and the average level kids, or the late bloomer hockey players, grows even bigger, because the kids who already have an advantage because they show more talent, they're more precocious, they bloomed earlier, they get even more training that enhances the fact that they're already better than all the other kids. And that's how this huge gap gets created. And this is why many late bloomers never actually get known. Many late bloomers don't ever, quote, make it, close quote, to tell their story and say, hey, I was a late bloomer, but I was still able to make it. Most late bloomers don't make it. Okay? Most late bloomers only tell you that they were a late bloomer as they're giving you the reason why they didn't make it. Or usually when someone's telling you they're a late bloomer, that's why they're telling you about it. Like, oh yeah, I did become good, but I became good too late, so I didn't get the same opportunities as everybody else. And you know what? They're not lying. They're telling you the truth. That's the way that it goes. There are places in life where the teaching, the instruction is going to be done one way. You're going to take a job somewhere one day where there's going to be one supervisor. They're the one who gives you the information, and they're going to give it to you the way that they give it to you. That's the one way that it's taught, and you got two choices. You will either sink or you'll swim. Nobody told you that everything was going to be set up and custom made for your success. If you thought it was, I got news for you. It's not. And this must be the first of these classes you've ever listened to, so welcome to the show. But you got over 1,400 to go through to make sure that we straighten you out. All right, you've been taught some things that are just not true. And life has probably been smacking you in the face with the truth. But now I'm going to give it to you in a way that not only will smack you in the face, but also tell you what you need to know so you don't get smacked in the face again. Let's recap today's class, which is late bloomers versus slow learners. Someone reached out to me and tried to draw a parallel between the two, but I wanted to make sure that people understand that there's a difference between the two. And I'm doing this masterclass to do it instead of talking to that one person where that only one person would benefit if that individual was a fast enough learner to get what I was saying. Instead of taking that risk, I'll instead make this whole masterclass and benefit everybody. You see how you can utilize even the most banal of circumstances to provide value to people. You just got to have that idea muscle popping. Now I want to refer you to masterclass number 601. Be a quick study, because slow learners get left for dead. That is the source of the whole conversation that led. Well, it wasn't a conversation, just one message that led to this masterclass right here. And I want to make sure that you are understanding that there's a difference between these two descriptions, I guess we'll say. Number one, late bloomer. Wikipedia says a person whose talents or capabilities are not visible to others until later than usual. The term is used metaphorically to describe a child or adolescent who develops slower than others in their age group, but eventually catches up and in some cases overtakes their peers, or an adult whose talent or genius in a particular field only appears later in life than is normal, in some cases only in old age. Notice there's nothing in the description of a late bloomer that says anything about their ability to learn. Being a late bloomer is about when your skills and talents show. Okay? Late bloomer could actually be a fast learner, but understand there's a difference between doing something and learning something. I had a good grasp of what I wanted to do on the basketball court, but until I bloomed, I couldn't actually do it. So I was able to grasp things rather quickly, but I just couldn't do anything with it. Point number two, a slow learner is someone who may have already earned a spot based on their skill or assumed potential, yet they don't pick up things or implement them as quickly as needed to keep pace with what is expected. So this could be at work, this could be in a group, this could be in a wider competition with your peers. What is fast enough? Well, it's relative. It depends on who's doing the judging. If everybody's adapting faster than you, then you're slow. All right, so a late bloomer could be a fast learner, like I said, once they have the abilities to actually implement what they are learning. Point number 3, a late bloomer is about your performance capabilities. That's from the neck down. A slow learner is about your capacity for understanding. That's from the neck up. Now, does everybody learn the same way? Does everyone develop at the same pace? Should everyone be uniformly expected to develop and learn at the same pace and in the same way as everybody else? No, no, and no. But guess what? Nothing in this masterclass has ever told you that things are supposed to be fair, because they're not, and they won't be. In life, you will go places where the early developers will get opportunities that you won't get if you're not one of them, and you will never get them because you got kicked out of the room. And there will be places where teaching is done one way, and either you pick up on it and you swim, or you get it too slow and you drown. That's just the way that it is in life. Nobody told you that things are going to be set up and custom made for you. If they did, they lied to you. Go back to them and ask them why they do that. Work on your game. Dre all day.